Hi there, thanks for joining me again. This time we're going to be taking a look, a bit of a step back at where the seedlings come from, so starting with the seed, and then also looking at an alternate way to grow plants through cuttings. We'll be talking about some of the pros and cons for both sides and how to get the best results in your garden. Before we deep dive into cuttings, I want to take a step back and look at why seeds might be more appropriate. The benefits of using a seed is you're able to choose a product that is suitable to your environment. Because this grows from scratch, a taproot is formed, which is something essential to allow additional nutrients. You can choose the seeds based on your environment, the season. You can also choose seeds specifically to grow certain types of fruit or the hardiness in which they will grow. By going through the germination process and establishing those roots and growing from scratch, the seed actually has a hardiness as it adapts to the environment. The downside, obviously, of going through all these processes is the extensive process that is required. So if you're hoping to get some yield in a short term, this is obviously not going to be your sort of first product, although there are amazing benefits from growing from seeds. By comparison, a cutting has its advantages in that this is taken from an established plant. As you can see, the leaves are healthy and vibrant. They smell amazing. All of these plants are already established for photosynthesis. The disadvantages of using a plant like this is that, as I mentioned, the taproot that is formed in the seedling, this doesn't occur in this state, so some of those additional nutrients are not able to be sourced, and there is, although we can tell this is a healthy plant, we don't know sort of the genetic background of this, and it may be more likely to be prone to diseases or challenges in its growth period. But as far as getting a yield faster, this is definitely the way to go. What's great about using a cutting, whether you're establishing a garden or whether you're just wanting to grow some things at home, is once you get the basics down, you can take sort of sample sizes of either a friend's garden or something you find in the wild and sort of have a bit of a test to grow yourself. This helps to provide inspiration for potential drinks menus before committing to buying a plant and getting a whole thing into the soil. So before you start hacking away at trees from your surrounding neighbourhood, it's really important to find out whether or not the plant that you're hoping to propagate can grow. The season in which you are taking the cutting does have an impact. This rosemary here, you can see the wood or the stalk is quite hard. There are 3 different types of stalk types to take into account, which is soft, semi-hard and hard, and that's affected by the season. As you move into autumn or winter as we are now, this rosemary is definitely quite hard. Additionally, plants such as this chocolate mint is on the softer side, and that will determine the way in which you treat it. I also encourage that you take the time to do some research when you're hoping to take a cutting to propagate in your own home or garden, whether it's referring to Google, talking to people at the local gardening centre, or even a professional horticulturalist if you have access. They'll give you the information you need to know. Plants, whether they are male or female, will give you different yields. I know from personal experience, trying to save a soon-to-be doomed frangipani plant by hacking off one of the stems one night. Unfortunately, that plant it's not around today. So once you've determined the type of plant that you have chosen is a viable one, the next part is around how to take the cutting. We're going to speak pretty broadly in relation to this cutting, but generally speaking, this is something that you can apply to most sort of herbs such as rosemary, mint, basil. The first and most important piece is obviously finding a plant that is healthy. As you can see, this beautiful rosemary should be healthy, should be vibrant. Looking at kind of the best time to cut would be springtime, as you're getting kind of fresh shoots coming through. That's when the most amount of energy is coming through the plant. By comparison, this plant is not one that I would suggest to be taking a cutting from. By the look of it, this looks like it probably was a cutting like previously, but as you can see, there's kind of some general unhealthiness looking around the plant. Looks like the soil is a bit kind of dry and generally needs a bit of love. So if you think that a cutting is a genetic copy of a plant, taking a cutting from this is not really setting yourself up for success. And the way that you want to take the cutting is just below this node here, where you have two kind of areas of main growth. The reasoning behind this is a really healthy piece of the plant, really active. Obviously you've got two offshoots here of the rosemary plant, so this is going to be the greatest chance of this continuing to grow or propagate. The other really important piece is when you are taking a cutting, is making sure that your secateurs are clean. You can either use a brand new pair as we've got here, or if you're using something that's using all the time, make sure you get just some alcohol just to rub that, make sure that nice and clean. The reasoning for that is if this has anything on the secateurs from a previous, maybe an unhealthy plant, you can transfer that to the new cutting, which is not going to set it up for success. The other piece as well is cut the cutting just on a horizontal line across the stalk. As you can see, just gives that a greater surface area for it to grow. Now, as we mentioned, there's a couple of different ways or different types of hardiness of the wood, whether we're talking about something on the semi-hard to soft, as in the case of this chocolate mint, or as some sort of hardwood, as in the case of the rosemary. Now, generally speaking, you can either plant your cuttings in water or in soil. The easiest way to look at it is that a softer wood, as in the case of the chocolate mint, is suitable for water, and a harder stalk is suitable for soil. So if we look over here at the tea tree as an example of where you want to cut from, as we mentioned, we're wanting to look for a piece of the plant where we have had some recent growth. So if we look at the tea tree plant here, as you can see, we have all these offshoots where the plant has come off. When we take a cutting, we want to cut just below that point on an angle. So as we've done here, we've got this angular cut. You can see this is giving us the most amount of surface area, and then what we'll do is we'll actually prepare this tree. Now that we've established that both the rosemary and the chocolate mint are suitable plants for us to propagate through cutting, we've figured out that the rosemary has a harder wood than the chocolate mint. So we know that the rosemary is going to be really suitable to go straight into soil, and that the chocolate mint we can propagate and grow via water. So, things you're going to need in the case of our soil propagation: a small container, some soil potting mix, seedling potting mix. We're going to take a glass so we can grow our chocolate mint, and we're going to need a bit of water. Luckily this thing just comes off like this. As well as these two, we're going to take our secateurs, which are nice and clean, as we mentioned. We're also going to need something as a nutrient, which we're going to use some honey water, and then we'll use a bit of water afterwards as well. So, we'll put our chocolate mint just to the side for a second, and let's start talking about how to get our rosemary ready. So the important piece here is we want to prepare the lower third of the entire cutting to go directly into the soil. The way that we want to do that is just to take off the parts of the plant that we do not need. You can see probably not too far off from here, and then we just want to take off the external bark If you ever stripped a wire before, it's not a dissimilar kind of process, just making sure that we're not actually taking off too much. Effectively, we're just trying to take off the external bark. This means that we give the plant a better chance of growing. Perfect. If you've had your cutting out of the soil for a while or away from the plant, feel free to take just an additional cutting here. But just remember, we had cut just below those nodes, which now they have been stripped off, but that's kind of a vital piece as far as nutrients for the plant. Now, this is not a vital step, but a really good one as far as getting your cutting happy and healthy, and that's using a nutrient. So you can buy a cutting nutrient from the gardening store, but if you're looking for a slightly more natural approach to this, here is a method which we use, which is really successful. So all you need is to make a honey water. Most bartenders are probably pretty well versed in doing that. And a really simple step though, we're going to use 2 parts honey to 1 part water. Using a raw honey is what you're looking for. A lot of the natural goodness that's kind of bubbling around in that honey does the job for us. Before we get this in here though, I'm just going to prepare the soil. So I've already put the soil in here in advance. Just remember to make sure that this is well packed down. And then in essence we want to create a hole into the soil for us to put our cutting into. Going to borrow this for 1 second. A pen or something similar to this is the right kind of size. In essence, you're just trying to make a space for it to go in. As you can see, nice little hole. And then all we need to do is just put this inside the honey water, which just helps to make sure that it's nice and happy and healthy. And we've got this sitting in here. We're going to take a bit more of our soil from before. Make sure that's firmly planted down. Now that we have our cutting in soil, we want to water the plant. By comparison to seedlings, we want to give this a bit more water. It is still, you know, a smaller plant by comparison to the stuff we have in the garden around us. So this big green watering can is probably just a little bit oversized for now. Luckily, I have a smaller one just for jobs such as this. Just making sure we're watering around all sides of the soil. Now we need to make sure that the soil remains moist but not overly wet, and it will take anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks for the roots to start to form. The easiest way to check whether or not the roots have attached is actually to just very gently dig your fingers into the soil and actually check around the base, and you should feel that rootstock start to form. Now that we have this one nice and happy, the next piece is how we're going to look after our chocolate mint. So this is really quite straightforward by comparison. As we mentioned, the stalk is a lot softer, so it takes a lot less kind of treatment to get it ready. We want to, yet again, just using our secateurs, cut away at the small shoots. And the reason we're going to use these as opposed to just ripping them off with your hands is it creates a lot less stress for the plant. You know, kind of ripping things off at the side is not really the best for the plant. Just going to give this a tiny snip here at the base, making sure we're still leaving that node, and then getting our plant a little bit of our honey water just to set it up for success. And this just sits nice and happily like so. Just make sure that both plants get adequate sunlight, making sure that they have an element of protection. This is kind of the perfect thing to be growing on your windowsill. It gets sun throughout the day, and similar story, this will start to form roots, usually around the 2 to 4 week mark. Once you see those are really well established, you can transplant them into the soil, not in a dissimilar fashion from a lot of the work that we did earlier on with the seedlings. So there you have it. These are two different ways in which you can take a cutting from a plant that is happy, healthy, and able to be propagated using either a water or a soil method. Another thing to bear in mind as well when it comes to taking cuttings or growing seedlings or anything in the garden is that, you know, part of the success of gardening is that things don't always succeed. So if your cutting runs into some troubles along the way, the wonderful thing is you can always give it another run. As long as you bear in mind of finding the right sort of plant that can propagate from cutting, ensuring that it remains happy, healthy, that it gets food, water, and some air, you should be on the right path to success. I highly recommend take the time, try again, and enjoy the process of growing your own food and drinks. Thank you again for joining me as we look at ways to take either cuttings, seeds, or seedlings and growing your own garden. Please make sure you join me for some of the next episodes. We're going to be stepping outside of the gardening with some other friends of mine to look at how to forage in an urban environment. We're going to be hanging out with the bees to discuss what an integral part they are to our garden. Hopefully see you there.